Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Great Heights Training. This is a webinar for Unit 2 of the course, and there are some people who are still logging in, but I'm still going to start. And what I want you to know is if you have any questions at any point, or if you cannot hear me, on the dashboard on your screen, there's a chat box at the end or a question box. So you can just type your questions in, or you can just let me know if you can't hear me at any point so that I'm aware of it and then I can just rectify everything. Um, my name is Krista. I'm the assessor for Great Heights Training. Some of you know me, some of you might not know me, but that's me. And today we'll be looking at assessing competence in the work environment. Some of you, I know you are doing level 3 in assessing vocational achievement, but Unit 2 is compulsory anyway, so we'll be looking at Unit 2 of the course. I know some of you have started working on that already. Some of you are new, you haven't started, so that's not a problem. We'll be going through it, and then you can just let me know if you have any questions towards the end. There will be a time where I'm going to answer any questions that anyone has. So what you do is, if you think of something, just type it in the question box, and then at the end, I will take all the questions, and I will try and answer every single question, because I'm sure a lot of you might have questions. So just type your questions in the question box, and at the end, I'm going to look at all the questions, and I'm going to answer them one by one. And that's basically what we'll be doing today. So, sorry, I'm just going to look at, I think somebody might have a problem, so I just want to check if anyone has any problems, so I can just see. If you have any problem, please just type it directly now. Let me just quickly say something. I know there's something like it looks like a hand, and you might think you want to raise your hand if you want to ask something. No problem, don't do that. Just quickly type your question, because by raising your hand, it's not going to affect anything anyway. So if you have any questions at any point, don't worry about it. I'm going to still keep going with the webinar. You just type your questions in the box, and then I'll start answering the questions at the end so that we don't break in between. So if everything is okay, I'm going to start. Before I go and start on Unit 2, for the sake of those who are just starting, so those of you who are nearly completed, or you've already completed Unit 2, or you've already started on Unit 2, please bear with me. I just want to quickly use 5 minutes for people who are new, who've just started the course, and who are still on Unit 1, and who have still some questions or are not sure on what they are doing. So I just want to quickly use that time to kind of address quickly something to do with Unit 1. For those of you who've just started, Unit 1 is the knowledge part of the course, which is the 37 questions or so that you need to answer, 1.1 till 8.4. The materials you need to start those questions is already in your link, the video lectures. So which means at any time you can just download those videos, you can watch them anytime. Somebody's just telling me that the sound, if your sound is not good, you need to adjust your speaker on your computer or on your laptop. If anybody else has any problems with sound, please do let me know. If one of you has problem with your sound, what you need to do is please look at your laptop or your computer and adjust the volume. What you will need to do is probably increase your volume, and then you can hear better. But if anybody else has any problems, please do let me know if you can't hear me very well, or if you have any problems, so I know whether it's a general problem or it's just a few people who are having that problem. If you can hear me well and you understand what I'm saying, please just probably type something to say everything okay or the sound is okay, so I know that everybody is hearing everything okay and everything is fine. So sorry about that. So I'm just going to go back to Unit 1. So what I'm saying is, for those who just started, you have a link to access all the video lectures. So these are the video lectures for Unit 1. All you need to do is just click on that link. You can download the videos anytime, so you can watch them again and again. And the video lectures will help you with Unit 1 knowledge in terms of planning assessment, methods of assessment, and also in your e-portfolio. Now, some of you might not understand what I'm saying. Some of you are on paper-based portfolio, some of you are on e-portfolio. So those who are on e-portfolio, you should have guidelines for Unit 1. The guidelines are actually the answers to Unit 1 for those of you who haven't seen it yet. The guidelines actually explain to you what you need to write from 1.1 till 8.4. Unit 1 is knowledge-based, and being a level 3 qualification, just to point out, your knowledge base is very important. This is the main thing that the ED looks at when he comes to ED the portfolio. He spends a lot of time on Unit 1. This is one thing that I found out. They look at Unit 1 and all the questions, the way the answers are written. They look at spelling mistakes. They look at the knowledge of the person. So that's why we did this guideline, which guides you to answer the questions for Unit 1. So this is the main thing. So for those of you who started Unit 1, very important. So make sure you watch the videos, then you read the guidelines and you answer the questions. When you answer the questions, they have to be answered in full sentences, no bullet points, that's not acceptable, and you have to explain your answers. You need to show the assessor, you need to show the ID and the ED that you have very good knowledge of what assessment is, and the videos and the guidelines will help you. And there's a book for those of you who don't have it. There's a book that's very good as well, which is The Principles and Practice of Assessment by Anne Gravel, edition 2011. That book is purely for Unit 1 knowledge. It deals with all the questions from 1.1 till 8.4. If you think you need some more knowledge to complete your Unit 1, I will recommend that book. That book is very good for Unit 1. But for those of you who are very quick, you learn, you get things easily, you understand the principles of assessment already, there's no need in spending money on that book because the guidelines and the video lectures are enough. But for those of you who feel like you need a bit more, then I would suggest that book. That book is very good. And what I'll probably do is I will probably send an email later with the name of the book and everything. But that book will help you as well. And the book, you can actually buy the book on Amazon, but there's a link on our website anyway. So for those of you who want to buy the book, we'll send you the link, and that will help you a lot with Unit 1. And it's good to have in your own library as an assessor as well, because you can always refer to it at any time. And the book is 2011 edition, so which means it's under the new QCF. So that's basically for Unit 1, which is mainly the question. So those of you who are still on Unit 1, please make sure that when you answer the questions, you follow the guidelines, and your questions have to show deep knowledge on assessment. And if you are not sure of anything, your assessor will guide you anyway to tell you to keep correcting until you get it right. So if your assessor keeps sending you work back to tell you, please amend this, please adjust this, don't think your assessor is picking on you. It's just to help you so that your work is accepted by the ED for your full qualification. So that's basically what I wanted to say about Unit 1. So let's move on to Unit 2. Unit 2 is assessing competence in the work environment, which is the part where you actually assess 2 learners who are working. Now remember, for those of you who are already doing this, the 2 learners you are assessing, they don't need to be doing an MDQ. Under the new QCF assessor qualification, everything has changed. If you have access to MDQ learners to assess, that's very good, because that's ideal. But if you don't have access to MDQ learners, you can assess people who are working. As long as they are working in the subject that you want to assess in, you are fine. So that's the most important thing. And because the course is now Training, Assessing, Quality Assurance, TAQA. That's the name of all the course that's to do with assessment and verifying. So it's about assessing quality assurance. Even MDQ is about assessing quality assurance, because when you are assessing people, like we all know, you are not using your own judgment. You are assessing people against set standards. You are assessing them against set criteria, whether it's in health and social care, business admin, hospitality, beauty, hairdressing, retail, customer service, engineering, construction, any area you are in. When you are assessing learners, you never assess learners using your own judgment. You assess learners against set criteria, set standards. Those criteria and those standards for a learner who's doing an MDQ is given to you by the awarding body. But for example, like I said, you can assess people who are not doing an MDQ. So if, for example, you are using somebody who's not doing an MDQ, it means the criteria you will be assessing them against will have to be the criteria that they use at work. Let me give you an example. If you are assessing somebody who's working in health and social care, but they are not doing an NVQ, the standards you will assess them against will be the care standards. I'm sure you agree with me, when somebody is working in health and social care, if you are doing health and social care, the person has to adhere to certain standards. They have to follow certain rules. They have to follow certain principles. For example, health and safety, confidentiality, SOVA, CRB, and all these things. So when you are assessing people who are not doing an NVQ, you are trying to find out what are set policies or procedures that they have to follow at work. If it's in business admin, set policies or procedures will be health and safety, public data protection, confidentiality, and if that company, for example, it can be anything. So I'm just trying to give you different examples. If the person at work, they have a way of answering the phone. Let's say that's their company policy. When you answer the phone, you need to say this, this, this. So as an assessor who's assessing the person, you can assess them against set procedures that the company has in place. So this is just to explain to you, because I know some people might be confused when I say you can assess people who are working and not in training. What did you assess them against? So what you assess them against will be current standards or procedures that they have to follow when they are working. So these are the standards that you will be assessing them against. For example, in customer service, if the company says when a customer comes in, this is the first thing you tell them, this is the next thing you do. So this is what you are assessing learners against. In a way, you are kind of evaluating that member of staff to make sure they are following the standards set by the company and they are following that quality assurance that's set by the company. So that's what you are doing during your practical side. You are assessing two people who are working. Whether they are doing an NVQ or whether they are not doing an NVQ, you are assessing them against set standards. And at the end of it, you need to be able to show that they tick all the boxes and to say that they are competent in their job. That's the objective. That's the final thing. In terms of assessing people at work, at the end of it, what you want is, as an assessor, you want to be able to write a statement to tell the employer or the awarding body, I have assessed this learner, I have looked at everything they do at work, and I can clearly say that they've ticked all the criteria. Therefore, my decision is that this person is competent in health and social care, is competent in business admin, is competent in hairdressing. You know, that's what the end product should be. There's no fail, there's no pass in NVQ. As an assessor, your job is to make sure you work with the learner, you support them, you do whatever it takes to prove that this person is competent. Now, for example, if you have a learner who's not serious, who's not submitting assignments, who's not doing what you want them to do, then that makes your job a bit more difficult, because then you can't just say that the person is competent if you don't have the proof to show it. So that's one very important thing. You need to be a good assessor. There are a lot of assessors out there who cut corners and just write statements to say somebody is competent when the person is clearly not competent. So you need to make sure that when you are working, when you start assessing, you follow standard procedures and practice. If you need 5 evidence, get your 5 evidence before you say that the person is competent. That's very important. That's very good work ethic, which is important to have as an assessor. And if you have a very good work ethic, it will not be difficult for you to get a job. So you just need to follow procedures. Everything you learn, just follow it. If you have a colleague who say, oh no, try this, try that, you just forget about that. You do what you know is right, and you will be fine. So that's what you're doing when you're assessing people who are doing under Unit 2. You are assessing 2 learners. Now, I know you have a flow chart that I'm going to go through, because some people might not understand it. So I'm going to show you the flow chart that all of you have already, so you know exactly what are the evidence we are looking for under Unit 2. Unit 2, you need to show your assessor, you need to show the IV, you need to show the EV that you are competent in assessing people at work, which means you can plan assessment with a learner, you can choose valid methods of assessment, you can give feedback to the learner after reviewing their work, you can cross-reference the work of that learner to set criteria to show that the learner has met each standard, and you can make assessment decision that is reliable, which is at the end of it, you can say that the learner is competent or not competent, and whatever you say is reliable. Somebody can verify that and it will be correct. So this is what you want to show. And then you also want to show that you can follow standardization procedures, which is whichever company you're working for, if they tell you this is the paperwork we use, this is the number of times we give feedback, this is the number of observations you need to do, these are called standardized procedures, and you need to show that you can follow that. So that's basically what we'll be doing under Unit 2. First thing we'll be looking at is assessment plans. I'm sure under Unit 1 you've looked at the webinar or the lecture on what an assessment plan is. So I'm not going to go too deep into what assessment plan is. I'm just going to go into the practical side of it in terms of how do you write an assessment plan, why do you write an assessment plan, and how do you make sure that your assessment plan is done in such a way that at the end of it, your learner would be competent, which means at the end of it, you would have gathered all the evidence that you need to show that that learner is competent. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to look at that flow chart that all of you have. So you can just look at my screen and you should see it there. That flow chart is the one that you have access to, which breaks down what we need for Unit 2. When you are assessing a learner from beginning to end, that's the main thing you are doing. Planning assessment, getting evidence, reviewing the evidence, and giving them feedback. And your feedback, you will write your report and your assessment decisions. But in terms of this course, because you don't need to complete a learner from beginning to end to qualify as an assessor, you just need to be able to work with the learner on 2 units. If the learner is doing an MDQ, you are required to work with them on 2 units. If the learner is not doing an MDQ, I suggest you still work with them on 2 elements. Whether you choose to work with them on health and safety or on the phone, or in probably in sickness, how do they do induction with their clients. So you just choose 2 things, 2 main topics that you're going to assess them against. That's what you need to do. So I'm going to explain this flow chart so that you understand a bit better what we require of you or what you need for your portfolio of evidence. This flow chart shows MDQ Learner 1, so, which means it shows the learner that will be working with. So this is MDQ Learner 1. What we need for the first learner is free assessment plan and free feedback review. Now I just want to quickly explain something. You can see here there are different methods of assessment. Now, under the training that you are doing, there are 7 main methods of assessment that we focus on. For those of you who've completed Unit 1, you have done that already. For those of you who haven't completed Unit 1 and haven't started Unit 1, you will find out later on once you start. There are 7 main methods of assessment to assess people at work. Now remember, I'm saying at work. There are other methods of assessment to assess people in classrooms, but now I'm just focusing on the work one, which is Unit 2. The 7 main methods of assessment are reflective account. Now for those of you who are here listening, I just want to quickly add that some of the methods of assessment, the names have changed now. So if you want to make notes of the name, please do so. Reflective account, it used to be called reflective account. It is now called learner statement. So you might want to write that down. Learner statement is the new name for reflective account. The second method of assessment is question and answer, which we all know. Third method of assessment is observation, which we all know, where you go and observe somebody at work. Fourth method of assessment is witness statement, where you get a witness who can be a supervisor, manager, colleague, or even a service user to write a witness statement to say that the person is good. Fifth method of assessment is APL, which is accredited previous learning. Now they call it recognizing prior learning. So you can write that down. Recognizing prior learning. That's the new name that's being used for APL, which is looking at previous training or qualification that the person has. The sixth method of assessment is professional discussion, which is where you actually sit down with the learner and have a discussion, and when they are talking, you just record what they are saying. The seventh method of assessment is work product, which is product of work. For example, these are actual things that the learner does at work or produce at work that they can bring as evidence. For example, if it's in health and social care, it might be a care plan, but remember, take into consideration data protection and confidentiality and block off every personal information of clients or service users. If it's in fitness industry, it could be like maybe a checklist that they have. If it's in induction checklist, in business admin, it could be a letter, it could be telephone message. This is what work products are. Things that the learner does at work or produce at work that can be used against the assessment. So these are the 7 main methods of assessment. The purpose of Unit 2 is for you to show that you can plan assessment with your learner using all 7 methods. That's why you use 4 methods with the first learner, 3 methods with the second learner. This is what guideline we've given you. But if you want to change, you can. Feel free to do that. If with your first learner you want to use 2 methods and then you use 5 with the second learner, as long as when I look at learner 1 plus learner 2 assessment plan, I can see all 7 methods reflected when I put both of them together. That's the basic. That's what's needed. So which means your assessment plans are used here to show that you can plan assessment using those methods. So that's what the purpose of Unit 2. Now, what I'm going to show you is 3 assessment plans that you need to produce with the first learner. The first assessment plan is usually an induction, where, now let me show you something, because some people sometimes don't understand it. So I want to kind of show you something. If you look at these boxes, these blue boxes here, they actually explain to you what you need to include in your assessment plan. They are just guidelines, so feel free to change it. If you can see here, first assessment plan is an induction where you explain the process to the learner. You talk about appeals procedure, the people who are involved in the assessment. It's like doing an introduction to the learner about the course. And in that same first assessment plan, you can choose the unit that the learner will be doing. Now, here I've written optional units. You don't need to just do optional units. Optional units, the reason I put that there, sometimes they are shorter than mandatory units. Mandatory units are usually longer. But it's down to you. If you want to do 2 mandatory units here, that's fine, as long as it's there. And then in that same first assessment plan, you always discuss APL with the learner. Always find out whether they've done some training in the past that can be used towards this qualification. So this little box here is actually giving you guidelines on how to write your assessment plan. As long as you've got everything in that assessment plan, it doesn't matter how you've written it or what tense you've written it or whether you've written short sentences. It doesn't matter as long as the content matches here and ticks the boxes. Then we move on to the second assessment plan. Your second assessment plan needs to show that at that meeting, you are actually planning and agreeing with the learner what are the methods of assessment you will be using to assess them. Now, here I've given you some guidelines on what methods of assessment to use with your first learner, but remember you can change that, you can mix and match, that's not a problem. But on your second assessment plan, you need to clearly say what are the methods that you have chosen to use to assess this learner. So you need to write it on that second assessment plan. When you agree the methods, always give your learner assignments, always give them deadlines. Never do a meeting or an assessment plan with your learner and then give them anything to do. You need to keep them busy, so always give them something to do until the next meeting. You agree deadlines so you can get your assignments on time, otherwise you won't. Third assessment plan here, as you can see, is where you actually plan observation. You probably already mentioned observation here. The third assessment plan, the purpose for that plan is for you to actually sit down with your learner and agree how the observation will go. Before you go and observe somebody, you need to make sure you tell them what you are coming to observe. You don't just tell the person, I'm coming to do an observation in your workplace, and then you just turn up. That's not good. Because if you plan to go and observe the person answering the phone, and then you don't tell them, you might go there on the day and the person is not answering the phone. Then it's a waste of time for you, waste of resources, costing money. So you need to make sure before you go and observe somebody, you actually plan, you actually write down what you're going to be coming to observe them on. You need to actually tell them, I'm coming to observe you, and this is what I want to see, and this is the time I'm going to come, this is the location, and make sure you get them to get permission from their manager. You don't want to go there and then the manager doesn't let you in. So get permission from the manager. And also mention about health and safety and confidentiality. I've added it here. You can see health and safety and confidentiality. Very important. You need to let them know. You need to also find out when you go there, do you need, what procedures do you need to abide by. They might have some set health and safety policies that you need to probably wear a certain type of protective clothing. You never know, depending on which field you are in. So make sure all this is looked at. Remember, Unit 1, you looked at what are the risks that might happen. Risk assessment, this is what you are doing when you're planning observation. You're looking ahead and you're thinking what can go wrong, and you take care of it at the planning stage. You don't want to get there and then things are going wrong. That will just be a waste of time for you. So this is really on assessment plan. If you have questions, remember what I've said, just type them in the question box and I'll be answering them later on. The next thing is, remember you've done first assessment plan, second assessment plan, third assessment plan. For each of these assessment plans, you've given the learner assignments to do. You've given them different evidence that they need to gather and bring to you. The next step is now for you to review those evidences and then give your learner feedback and make an assessment decision, which is under feedback review and assessment decision. So for each plan, you need to do one feedback. So because you've got 3 plans, you will have 3 feedbacks here. Now the first feedback is usually not too much because on your first assessment plan, you haven't given the learner too much to do, but you still need to meet with them and look at what you told them to do, review it, tell them whether you think it's good, whether the evidence can be used towards the assessment, whether they've done the right thing, whether it meets the criteria. So this is what your feedback needs to contain. During your feedback, you need to be able to say that I have looked at your work, I've looked at the work product that you've brought in. They are very good, they meet the criteria, you've considered confidentiality, you've blocked out any confidential information, so I'm happy. This is basically what you're telling your learner, and give them constructive feedback. Remember, we talked about that in Unit 1. Constructive feedback is very, very important. That's what the IB will be looking at. Is your feedback constructive? Is your feedback helping the learner? Is your feedback encouraging the learner? So, and in your feedback, they want to see, does your feedback show that you've actually looked at the criteria against the work of the learner? So you need to mention that in your feedback, that your work meets the criteria, because it shows here that you are not using your judgment, but you're using the set standards from the awarding body. And so your feedback needs to show that. And the other thing your feedback needs to show is your assessment decision as an assessor. So when you're completing your feedback, you always need to make a decision. Your decision will be, on this unit, I believe you are partially competent at the moment. If you provide the remaining evidence, you will be fully competent. So you are making assessment decision. So this is basically what the feedback is. I'm going to show you now examples of feedback. Now remember, look at this part where it shows the different methods of assessment. Before you can give feedback to a learner, definitely you need to look at the work first. You need to look at the reflective account, question and answer, witness statement. You need to review them. This is why this box is here. But one thing I'm reminding you is I do not need the work of your learner in your portfolio. If your learner has done a reflective account, your learner has brought a witness statement for you, I don't need that. Your portfolio just needs the assessment plan and the feedback. That's all I need from you. I don't need this. This is going to be in your learner's portfolio, not in your portfolio. So this is what I'm just reminding you. This your learner will give to you, you will review it and give it back to them. But your plans and your assessment decision, this is what we need to assess you. So this is basically what you do with Learner 1. If you can understand that, you can easily complete your Unit 2. This is for Learner 1. If you can understand for Learner 1, you can easily understand for Learner 2. Learner 2 has less work to do. With Learner 2, you only have 2 assessment plans. First one being the induction, second one being the one where you choose the methods of assessment, and 2 feedbacks where you give feedback on assessment 1, feedback on assessment 2. And there's less assessment methods here. Example, one thing that I want to say that some people might come across. If, for if your learner doesn't have any previous qualification, you just need to make sure you mention it on your assessment plan, that you discuss with your learner. And then in your feedback to that first assessment plan, you write, I asked the learner about previous qualification, but the learner doesn't have anything that can be used towards this assessment. Once you write it, I will be able to cross-reference that to show that you've actually used that method of assessment. Even though the person didn't bring the certificate for you, you planned for it and you've given feedback that the person didn't have it. So this is good enough for me. So just to let you know, for example, if your learner doesn't have APL, don't say, oh, the person doesn't have it, so I'm not going to write it. No, you need to write it down, because that's the reason I'm asking you to write it down. I need that to be able to show that you are competent in using that method of assessment. Because without APL, the 7 methods are incomplete, and I need to be able to show that. So this is basically what assessment plan and feedback you need to do for Unit 2. What I'm going to do now, I'm going to use sample assessment plans that another learner has done, and then show you how it's written. So I'm showing you some samples so you can probably see practically how it's done, and then you can write your own. So let me start assessment plan 1. So I don't know if you can clearly see it on your screen, but I'm going to probably read it. So I'm going to show you here. So this is assessment plan 1. This is how it looks like. All of you have sample of that. You have that in your portfolio. For those of you who started doing Unit 1, I know you've already started doing it. So here, definitely you need to fill out everything. Do not leave any blank. The name of your candidate, your name as the assessor, what qualification they are doing, which level, what are the units, and the date that you are meeting them and the time. For those of you who are not assessing learners who are doing an NVQ, you can just write, if the person is working in health and social care, write health and social care here. And then you write the name of the standards you want to assess them again. So this is basically an assessment plan. So I hope you can read it. It's just the episode where the person says, I've spoken to Catherine and explained in detail what an NVQ entails, how she will be assessed, including IV, EV, QA. These are the people involved in the assessment. And then I answered a few questions she had regarding the portfolio and how it will be developed. We went through the appeals procedure and the induction paperwork, and Catherine shows that she understands by signing the form. After the induction, I spoke to Catherine about what she does at work, and we discussed which units might be best for her to cover. So you can see here in the same assessment plan, the person actually do the induction, talk about the appeals procedure, about the work of the learner, and then go on to choose the units that the person will be doing. And then towards the end here, it says, before concluding our meeting, we agreed that Catherine would start on the knowledge questions and email me the answers by this date. We also agreed that Catherine would write a reflective account in a holistic way based on all the units she's doing. So this is basically first assessment plan. The person has met all the criteria here by writing following the guidelines. And at the end of it, you can get your learner to write something if you want, or if you don't, that's not necessary. Before you finish your first assessment plan, remember you need to plan the date of the next visit and write it here, time of the next visit, and location of the next visit. And then you get the learner to sign and date. You get the assessor, who is yourself, to sign and date. And then here you can pick the signature of Ivy. You need to get an Ivy to sign and date in red. Remember, it's in red pen. Red pen. The Ivy, if you are assessing learner who's doing an NVQ, the learner should have an Ivy, so the Ivy can easily find that for you. If you are not assessing a learner who's doing an NVQ, the person who can sign it can be a manager or a supervisor. It doesn't have to be the learner's manager or supervisor. It can be your own manager or your own supervisor. As long as they sign it with red pen and date it with red pen. Most IVs use red because it's easy to identify that this is the IV. You don't need to get all your assessment plans signed and dated. It's only about, let's say, 2 of them from each learner that needs to be signed and dated. This is just to show that your work is authentic. That's the reason. So let's look at assessment plan 2 that this person has done. This is assessment plan 2 that this person has done. I don't know how to, okay, I'm just going to make it a bit bigger so you can see. Hopefully you can see that better and you can read it better. At the top here, same thing, name, assessor, qualification, unit, date, and time. And here you can see this is what the person wrote. I met with Catherine to look at what she has done so far and plan her assessment. Catherine has chosen her unit and is ready for assessment. She's still working on the reflective account we agreed. She will email me once finished. We looked at the assessment criteria from the awarding body, and I explained to her that all evidence will need to match those standards. Definitely you can see, you need to take your learner along, let them understand what you're doing so they can help you and do a lot of your work. So you have less work to do. We agreed to use the following methods of assessment. Here you can see she's listed all the methods she wants to use with this learner. Direct observation, she explained a little bit about it, so make sure you do that. Don't just list the methods in bullet points. Reflective account, witness statement, work product, and APL. She talks about APL as well here. She didn't write it on her first assessment plan, but she wrote it on her second. As long as it's on one assessment plan, that's fine. Before we finish, this is what I asked Catherine to do, and they agreed the date of the next visit. So don't forget, always agree the date, time, and location of the next visit. Let's look at third assessment plan. This is third assessment plan, the one where you actually plan your observation. Same thing, date, qualification, unit, date, time. Today, Catherine and I talked about the observation assessment. I asked Catherine if I could carry out an observation at work. We agreed that it would take place on this date in the Supersteel office at this time. Now remember, your assessment plan has to always be agreed. You can't give orders to your learner. You can't tell your learner, do this, do this, do that. No. If you are working together, you're not a teacher, you're an assessor. So you are assessing a learner who already knows what she's doing, but you just want to be able to prove that the person is competent. So everything has to say, we agree. Always agree with your learner, because it shows to the ID that you discussed with your learner and you agreed it together. You didn't impose on the learner. So Catherine and I agreed that the observation would consist of. See, she breaks down exactly what her observation will consist of. Managing the phone, she explained to the learner, this is what I want you to do. Using direct observation, I will listen and record Catherine taking a call from a customer, passing it through to another member of staff. Catherine has also manager's permission, and this may take more than one call to get an appropriate request. You can see the person is already planning ahead. They know she might take some time to get a call that will fit the purpose of her observation. They've already got manager's permission. The next thing she wants to see is customer relations. And she's talking about getting a witness statement. So you can see here, she wants to see the learner producing documents. So which means your third assessment plan, before you go and observe, you plan in detail, this is what I want to see. So as you can see, there's a lot of planning involved, which is why as an assessor, before you even go out to start working with a learner, you need to plan yourself very well. Because when you get there, you need to know what you want to do. It's not when you get there that you will start thinking, oh, maybe we should do this, maybe we should do that. No, this is not being professional. You need to plan everything ahead and make sure you know what you want to do. Now I'm going to look at another learner's feedback, so you see how the feedback is done. You can see some things in red. This is just me giving feedback or writing things, so you don't need to worry. The feedback forms look like this. The name of the candidate, the name of the assessor, qualification, what level, unit, date, and time. Look here, I said, if time change, please explain why. In your first assessment plan, remember you agreed with the learner what's the date of the next visit and time of the next visit. So which means you know exactly what you want to come and see next time. So very, very important. So what you need to do is, if for any reason the date you agreed to meet or the time you agreed to meet changes, always mention it in your feedback. When you meet the learner here, you can start by writing, we agreed to meet on this date at that time, but the plan changed because of this and this reason. Very important, because when the ID or the ED is looking at your assessment plans and your feedback, they want to see an audit trail. They want to see that everything is following, everything is agreed. So if there's a break in between in terms of the time is different, maybe you agreed to meet at let's say 8 o'clock, and you actually meet at 10. So you need to actually explain here why the time changed. That will help with your audit trail. So very important to do that. So let's look at the feedback that the person has written here. Now you can see at the top here, I want to show you something. It says assessment decision, candidate competence, or further evidence required. During the first two feedbacks, it will be further evidence required because the candidate hasn't completed yet. When you finish at the end, that's when you skip candidate competence. Yes? So when you think your candidate is competent, that's when you skip it. So let me just quickly read this feedback for you. I have asked Natalie to write a reflective account on this unit in a holistic manner. You can see she's got some spelling mistakes here, but make sure you don't do that. She has brought it back to me today, and I believe the evidence she has provided me is very good. Natalie has also emailed me the answers to her general knowledge questions, which she has worked well on. Natalie has also provided me with some work-based products and a witness statement, which she has provided evidence of welcoming visitors and receiving calls. You can see in this feedback, she's not only giving feedback on one thing, she's giving feedback on about 4 different things here. So you can do that as well. Let's keep going. It says, I had a look at your work, Natalie, so she's actually talking to the person now, and it is very good. Your reflective account is very good. She has written it very well and has met the deadline. You have covered the criteria and units that were given to you. So you can see here she mentioned the criteria. For me, I want you to complete successfully. In order for us to improve on this, I will need you to add more information on section 2 of your reflective account. Overall, I believe you have done very well. I will cross-reference this, and you have done an excellent work to start your MVQ. So she's already giving the person some adjustments to make here, but she explained to the person, I want you to complete successfully. So she's not criticizing the person, oh, you missed this, you missed that. No, she's explaining to the person, because I want you to complete successfully, this is why I need you to do this and this and this. Here she said, I have looked at your answers that you emailed me. They have been answered very well. However, on question 1, it would be good to expand a little on your answers, a little more, to give your answer with more content. Give more content to your answer. So you can see here that the person is actually giving constructive feedback, and this is what you need to do when you give feedback. There is no such way of writing feedback. As long as what you are writing makes sense, it's positive, it's constructive, it's encouraging, it shows you are using the criteria, and you make a good assessment decision, that's fine. Just make sure you write it well. And here, before you finish your feedback, you agree the date of the next visit, the time, and the location. And then you give the learner actions to be taken. Your actions will match probably your assessment plan number 2, which is here like maybe you get them to write a reflective account, review question, whatever you want them to do, get them to do it here. You write the name of who's going to need to do it and give them a deadline. This is very good because it helps you to track what your learner needs to do, and it helps your learner as well. If they have a copy of this, they know exactly what they need to do by which date, and they will bring it to your next meeting. You get the learner to sign, you sign, date, and same thing here, get the ID to sign in red. This is basically, that's how a feedback is done. I'm going to try and look at another one here. Same thing again, another feedback. Just says they've taken into account. I have reviewed Natalie's reflective account following my last feedback. So she asked the learner to do some adjustments. So she's just saying here, she's looked at it again. She's telling the learner you've done well, and she's looking at the questions again. So you can see here, it's just about giving constructive feedback. That's what it's all about. And then the last feedback here. She said, I have written a report on my direct observation, and today Natalie and I have agreed to meet with you, and I will give feedback to Natalie on her performance. Natalie has been given a copy of my direct observation, which she has read, and I have asked her if she has any questions and my findings. Natalie is happy with what I have. She has no questions or concern. This is one good thing. Every time you meet with your learner, always ask them if they have any questions or if they are not happy with any of your assessment decisions. Because remember, they can appeal if they are not happy. Natalie performed well in her observation. You were able to make and receive calls and have a clear understanding and professional manner of making and receiving telephone calls. You're also competent in welcoming visitors, you've been professional. So this is basically you giving feedback to the learner. And here at the end she says, I believe that the candidate is competent in this unit. She writes it here, I believe that the candidate is competent in this unit. So that's your assessment decision. And if there's any further things you need them to do, you write it here. So that's basically feedback and assessment plan. What I will do now, I will actually take a break and look at questions. So if you've written any questions, I'm going to be looking at them now. So if you have any questions, please write them now, and then I will let you know. Somebody asked me, can I ask where I can find the flowchart? I don't recall seeing it when I downloaded all the information. Okay, let me just tell you where it is. If you are using ePortfolio, if you go under Evidence Library under Unit 2, if you go under Unit 2, where you downloaded your materials for Unit 1 in your ePortfolio, go to Unit 2, click on Download Materials. It's on the right-hand side. It's a little arrow that says Download Materials. You can download it there. The evidence, the flowchart is there. If you don't see it there, please make sure you email your assessor, and your assessor can tell you. If somebody cannot hear me, no, somebody said, I can't hear you, I have been muted. You haven't been muted. You cannot talk, but you should be able to hear. If you can't hear me, then you need to look at your laptop or at your computer and make sure that the speaker is good and it's on. It's not muted and you're able to hear me. Somebody said, okay, somebody wants me to repeat the name for APL. Remember APL, the new name for APL is Recognizing Prior Learning. What I will do is I will type it on my screen so you can probably see it. I'll write it under methods of assessment here. So APL is Recognizing Prior Learning. That's the new name for APL. Yeah, Recognizing Prior Learning. That's the name here for those of you who didn't catch that before. So if you have any other questions, please write your questions down. I'm still going through questions now, and I'll be answering them. So I'm still looking at it. So if you have any questions, please keep writing it down, and I'm going to be answering them. If you can't hear me clearly, please let me know. Somebody asked, can we be sent the examples of the plans and feedback? You already have a sample assessment plan for the induction and the feedback for the induction. But in terms of the rest of it, if I send it to you, it's like I'm giving you the answer really. But what I will do is, please, if you need samples, email me individually. I won't do a mass email to send everybody, but please email me individually. If you need sample assessment plans and sample feedback, email me. My email address is office@greatheightstraining.co.uk. So email me and request. Tell me exactly what you want and I'll send it to you. So just email me and I'll send it to you. So I've got another question here. If NVQ learners, my manager has to sign MD2 feedback and assessment plan for both learners. Okay, if you are working with an NVQ learner, try and find out if the learner has an IV. If the learner has an IV, you can get the IV to sign both 2 assessment plans and 2 feedback for both learners. If for any reason you can't get hold of an IV, then you can get your manager to do that, yes. But make sure your manager signs it in red. You can definitely do that. I hope that answers your question. I'm still going through the questions. So remember what I've said, if you need anything, if you need any materials or any plans, any sample, just email me and I'll give it to you. So I think that's the most thing I'm getting. Okay, somebody wants to know if I will cover strengths and limitations. I won't cover strengths and limitations because that's Unit 1. But what I will do is, remember what I've said, there's that book which is Principles and Practice of Assessment. That book will help you on the strengths and limitations. But look at the assessment methods handout which you have in your portfolio, where it gives you all the different methods and explain what the methods are. That should give you some strength and limitation as well. Let me keep going. Please could you repeat the new name for the reflective account? The new name for the reflective account is learner statement. Please write it down. It's learner statement. Anything to do with reflective account is called a learner statement. What I will do is, I will type it later for you, but it's learner statement. Somebody wants to know who is the author of Principles and Practice of Assessment. I'll type it on my screen shortly, and then I will be able to give you that information. Let me look at another question here. I am working in oil and gas industry. My learner covers small section of plants, and we assess them regularly till they clear and become competent. Can I use those? Definitely you can use that. If you can apply it to any industry really. So you know exactly, because you are more competent than me in your industry. For example, in the oil and gas industry, you say your learner does some covers small section of plants. You can assess them on that, definitely. You can also assess them on health and safety. I'm sure they have health and safety procedures that they have to follow in that industry. You can definitely do that. If you're not very sure, I would suggest you email me, and then I'll be able to answer your questions as well. Should I have signed those competencies as their company confidential? Okay, you said in oil and gas, if it's confidential, remember what I said, I don't need the actual evidence that your learner gives you. I only need your assessment plans and your feedback. So those ones, you get them signed by the learner, by yourself, and by the IB or the manager. In terms of actual work product from your industry, maybe how do they assess plants or whichever, I don't need that. That one, it won't breach any confidentiality, because I don't need to see the actual assignments that the learner does because of confidentiality. I only need to see your assessment plan and your feedback. So I hope that answers your question. The only proof you need is your assessment plans and your feedback. That's the only thing I need from you. But for future reference, when you are working and assessing people for real, then what you do is any confidential information, black it out before you give it, before you put it in your learner's portfolio. Black it out. So I'm still going through the questions. I'm nearing completion of Unit 1 and we'll be starting the Unit 2. I'm not sure where I can find 2 candidates for my sector is retail. Do you have any suggestions, as I think you may have had this question asked before? Thanks. Okay, if you are in retail, if you want to work with 2 NVQ learners, it will be quite difficult. But if you have colleagues or friends who work in retail with you, you can ask them to volunteer to be your learners. They won't have too much to do. If you still have difficulty, you can approach, you can speak to different retail shops, even charity shops. They have people who work as customer service. So you can ask them, if you are training as an assessor, can you assess their learners? But I think the best way will be to speak to colleagues or friends who you work with. They will be the best people to work with in terms of assessing learners, because I think that's the best thing. If you have any questions, please keep asking them. Do we need to be observed by an assessor while working with the 2 learners? No, you don't need to be observed with an assessor when you are working with the 2 learners. What, in terms of, for example, for your own training, I'm answering this question based on training. I'm running out of time, so please keep sending the questions so that I can answer them. If, for example, you are, for me, what I need to observe you as your assessor, if I'm your assessor, I need to observe you giving feedback to one of your learners. Feedback session can be done anywhere, anytime. It doesn't have to be in the workplace. So if I need to observing you giving feedback to your learner, what you can do, if you are outside London, you can video record that session. where you and the learner you are sitting, you are giving feedback to your learner. It's usually a 5-10 minute session. You can even use your phone to video record that and then email it to your assessor. Based on that, your assessor will write the observation report, and then that's how you will be assessed on the observation side. For those of you who are in London, you can arrange for your assessor to come and observe you giving feedback to your learners. Somebody said they want to ask a question in assessment methods. You might as well ask your question now before I finish. Hello, Krista. If I'm assessing a diploma or degree student, can I ask the manager or lecturer to sign, or their mentor? The best person would be their mentor on duty. You can ask the mentor on duty to sign, but you can also ask the manager. No problem. As long as, remember, it has to be signed in red pen, because it shows that this person is checking your work. So it can be their mentor on duty, definitely, or it can be their manager. No problem. That's fine. Let's keep going. Yeah, I will write the name of the book for you. Can the discussion part of professional discussion be completed and recorded using Skype? Definitely. You can definitely use Skype to do the professional discussion, and you can record it. That's the best, genuine, authentic method of assessment. If you have a recording, you can just let the ID listen to it. You don't need to write a report. So if you want to use Skype to do that, definitely, no problem. Somebody else said, I am already assessing some learner on level 2 diploma in health and social care. Can I use my feedback with them for my A1 course? Of course you can do that, definitely. If you are already assessing learners, you don't need to duplicate. Please do not go and do assessment plans again. Do not go and do feedbacks again. Whatever you are already doing with those people, send it to your assessor, and your assessor will use that to assess you. You do not need to duplicate work. The same thing you have, use it. That's very good, because then it allows you, at least you don't have to duplicate work, so which is very good. I'm still going to questions. What I will do now is, let me quickly go to cross-referencing. I'm running out of time, so I'll be quite quick, because some of you will definitely need that. Cross-referencing. What cross-referencing is actually looking at an evidence that your learner gives you, and then showing that it matches the question that's there. Sorry, let me just see, somebody's asking another question. Should we load these work plans as signed docs, can only be loaded as PDF? Definitely. If you want to get it signed, scan it and upload it, or scan it and PDF it, no problem. Anywhere, it can be anywhere. So you can do that as long as it's written and everything is there. So let me look at cross-referencing quickly. I'm going to open somebody's, I'm going to show you somebody's cross-referencing work so you can see how it's done. I think I've sent it to some people already, but I'm going to open one cross-reference report here so you can see how it looks like. Cross-referencing is when you look at the work of the learner and you match it against criteria. So you actually show what criteria the learner has met. This is an observation report that has been cross-referenced. You can see this is the template that most of you have, a holistic evidence record sheet. The person wrote their report here. I observed Catherine on this date. So Catherine greeted me outside the building. You can see here she wrote Unit 201. Let me highlight it for you. She wrote Unit 201 PC. PC means performance criteria. Under the new QCF, it's called assessment criteria. And these are the numbers. What I will do is, let me quickly show you something. I'm going to open standards here for you. Let me open, I'm a bit confused. Let me open business admin or something. So I'm just going to open any standards for you. I'm going to open a business admin standards. You should be used to this by now, all these documents. So I'm going to open one so we can go and I can show you what are the criteria that you are referencing again, so you know. Forget about all this paperwork. They all give you a lot of paperwork with awarding body. Okay, look at this. This is Unit 110, and through your own action reduce risk. Every single standard will be written like this. You can see here it says performance indicators. number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It goes on till this is underpinning knowledge. That doesn't exist anymore. It goes on to 15. So these are the criteria from number 1 here to number 15. So when you are assessing a learner, these are the things you need to tick to show that your learner is competent. First here it says correctly name and locate the persons responsible for health and safety. So this one you can actually use a question and answer or professional discussion or a reflective account to assess that. But when you look at this report, go back to the here. This is an observation report. Here it says Catherine greeted me outside the building and let me into the office using the building's security lock. She showed me around her office, including showing me the filing system, fax machine, her desk where she works, and where we started the observation. So what you do, you read this, and then you go to your standards, you read through number 1 to 15, and then you try and see whether there's anything here that matches what the person did. If there's anything that matches, for example, let me read and see if there's anything else. Identify which workplace policies are relevant, identify this which could harm yourself, evaluate, report, deal with hazards, carry out your working practice. Okay, this could be one. Carry out your working practices in accordance with legal requirements. You can see here that she used security lock, something like that, what's written. Building using the security lock. This is something to do with the requirement, the procedures, the practice of that workplace. So this actually matches that criteria. So what I would write here is unit 110, criteria number 8. So I will write number 8 here. This is what cross-referencing is. It's the biggest part of being an assessor. It can be a headache sometimes, but with practice, practice makes perfect. So with practice, you will probably know the standards of head. When you read something, you will quickly be able to identify, oh, this matches unit this, performance criteria this. So this is what cross-referencing is. So every evidence that your learner gives you, whether it's a witness statement, reflective account, question and answer, professional discussion, APL, observation, anything, you have to cross-reference them. Why do you cross-reference? So you know exactly what criteria your learner has met. If you don't know what criteria your learner has met, how are you going to be able to make an assessment decision? So you need to actually be able to do that. So remember, cross-referencing is very important in assessment. You need to cross-reference the work of your learners. You can practice it. Pick up the standards for your course, pick up something and start cross-referencing just for practice. But even with your own assessors, with your own learners, do it. If your learner gives you something, cross-reference it. Now, if it's an observation, you can write it here and cross-reference it here. Now, if it was, like, example, it looks like this is an assessment plan, you can just write next to it here. You can just write unit 21.3. This means unit 21, criteria number 3. This is what it means. So you can actually cross-reference on any assignment directly, next to the line, next to the sentence. Watch the cross-referencing video in unit 1. That will help you a lot. That shows actually how cross-referencing is done. But this is just to quickly tell you. Before I finish, I'm going to show you something else quickly, which is tracking evidence. How do you track evidence of learners? I hope I find something like this here. Matrix. This is what it's called, tracking evidence of learners. I'm open one for, let's say, business admin. Or let me open one for, even for your own assessor course. Your course has its own, let me see, Matrix unit 2. So I'm going to just show you, when you track evidence, when you cross-reference, you need to be able to have a sheet and code what things have been met already. Okay, this is a matrix, but let me use the one for assessors here. This is how an evidence, location, and summary sheet looks like. It kind of shows you, when the Ivy looks at your portfolio of your learner, that's the first thing they look at. These are all the different criteria, 1.1, 2.4, 4.4 for Unit 2, which is the unit that we are doing right now. So how you need to do it is, when you cross-reference the work of the learner, let's after cross-referencing, you need to come here, open this document, you write the method of evidence here, if it's a work product or if it's a personal statement, if it's a observation. Location here, this is just for reference, means where is it located in the portfolio, which page number, you can write that. And then here you tick if the work product, when you cross-reference it, has met criteria 1.1, 2.1, 2.4, you tick it. Once you tick that, I'm just going to quickly do it so you can see. Let's say this has met criteria 1.1, 1.4, and 2.3. Yeah, you tick it. And then let's say personal statement has met, I'll try and cheat and see if it works, all these criteria. And then you've got observation, observation will probably meet these criteria. Yeah? So when your IB is looking at it, they look at each criteria, and then they look whether these criteria have been met at least once. Each of these criteria have to be met minimum once. If at least one criteria is not met, this unit cannot be signed off. So that's why you need to make sure that the methods of assessment you use are planned against criteria, so that you know by the time the person gives you this reflective account, you know all these criteria would have been met because you planned it. So you need to plan. In assessment, you need to plan ahead. Plan everything and make sure the way you plan your assessment, when those evidence come to you, they will hit each criteria. So even here, even though these have been met only once, this unit can still be signed off. If it's been met 3 times, it's very good. If it's been met twice, it's good. If it's been met once, it's good as well. You won't be penalized if the criteria is met only once. But sometimes we say it has to be met 3 times. That's just good ideal practice. But as long as it met once, you are fine. This unit can be signed off because all the criteria have been met. So this is what a tracking sheet is. It helps you to see all the criteria have been met. If this wasn't met now, you can quickly see it from here. Let's say, for example, 0.44 is not met, and so you know exactly, okay, I need to do something to cover 4.4. You can quickly probably do a question and answer with your learner, or quickly do a professional discussion just to meet 4.4. So that's why assessment is very creative. It's very interesting, but it's all about planning and knowing what you're doing. My voice is nearly gone, but we're running out of time already anyway, so this is what it is. Now quickly before I go, some people I know usually have this question. Question and answer is not given to you. It's not like knowledge questions that the awarding body will give to you. Question and answer is something you make up as an assessor. For example, when I look at these performance criteria, if I believe some of them can be met through question and answer, I will quickly just make up questions to do with it, and then give it to the learner and get them to answer it, and then tick that it's been met. So question and answer is something that you create as an assessor. It's not given to you by an awarding body. That's question and answer. Even professional discussion is something you plan as an assessor. It's not given to you. So I've done cross-referencing, I've done tracking sheets, so I've actually finished everything. So I hope you are clear on what you need to do for Unit 2. And even in real life, you know exactly what you need to do when you are assessing a learner. Planning assessment, giving feedback, choosing reliable method of assessment, making assessment decisions, cross-referencing, and making sure that all those criteria are met. If you want to be a profitable assessor, you will sit down in advance, look at all your units, and plan exactly which method you will use for each criteria. So it's easier for you. Once you do your planning once, you don't have to repeat it again. Once you plan once, you use the same thing across all your learners. So it's not difficult. But if you don't plan, you will be all over the place and you won't be able to finish learners on time. So very, very important. So if you have any questions, please, what I will do is email them to me. You have my email address, office@GreatHeightsTraining. Before I go, let me just write something. I did tell people I was going to write it before. The new name for reflective account, please, for those of you who wanted that, is personal statement. That's the new name for reflective account. And the book that I mentioned is Principles and Practice of Assessment by Anne Bravo, edition 2011. What I will do is you can get it, if you go on our website, you should be able to find the book there. If not, you can buy it from Amazon. It's on Amazon. It's not expensive. For those of you who don't have it and who wants to buy it, it's a good book to have. It will help you in the future, but it's very knowledge-based, just to let you know. It doesn't show you practical. It only shows you about the knowledge, which is Unit 1. So I hope, let me just see, I'm just going to quickly take a question because it looks like somebody has a question. Should you use all 7 methods in real life? No. In real life, you don't need to use all 7 methods of assessment. As long as all your criteria are met at least once, you are fine. But use more than 1 method of assessment. Don't just use observation and then say, okay, finish. Use at least 2 or 3 methods of assessment. It's good practice. Your IB wants to see that you've used various methods of assessment, but you don't need to use all 7 methods. This is just for your training purposes. You are using all 7 methods across 2 learners to show that you are competent as an assessor in doing that. So you don't have to use all 7 methods on one person in real life, definitely not. And what is the question set by the awarding body called? Usually if awarding bodies set questions, they don't do it anymore. Under the new QCF, they don't set questions anymore. But under the old one, under NVQ, this is what they used to call it. You can see it here, underpinning knowledge. Underpinning knowledge are knowledge questions that are mandatory, that learners need to answer. That's under the old NVQ. Under the new QCF, there is no knowledge question, there is no underpinning knowledge. So thank you very much for attending the webinar today. I hope it was good for you, but please do email us your feedback, because if some of you had some problems, I want to know about it. So do email me your feedback and let me know if you have any questions following this webinar on Unit 2. And we are here to support you. If you have any questions, email me at any time. Email your assessor, and we'll be here to help you. So I'm just looking at the last question. That's fine. Thank you very much. So if you have any questions, please do email us. Email us your feedback. And for those of you who are finishing, you've got a lot of job because the EV is coming on the 6th, and next week the IV is IVing the portfolio. That's for those of you who are finishing. Those of you who've just started, please don't worry about it. So for those of you who are finishing, you'll be hearing from me very soon because we need to get on and complete everything over this weekend. So thank you very much for attending, and I will speak to you later, and email me all your feedback and your questions.